Hey there, we have like eons of stories to tell, so if you want to follow us along on this journey and keep up with all the stories that we have putting out, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Hope you enjoy. Thank you. Hey, what is up everybody? Chad is here, and today we're basically starting the story of Adam, the Legend of Blue Marvel. So this story right here is actually stupidly good. This is an amazing story, right? So basically, the Blue Marvel, he was pretty much made as to be like a black, super powerhouse pretty much, right? To like rival like, Sentry, Hyperion, Gladiator, all those different guys, right? He was created for that reason, right? Because there weren't any at the time. And basically, he is far stronger than any of them. He is far stronger than any of them. Like Adam Brashear is stupidly OP, right? So this story right here is kind of, like if you're of the, soft marshmallow variety, you might get a little sort of triggered by how it was, written, but I mean, it's a comic book, I wouldn't really see why you would be mad about it. But it gets kind of sketchy at some points, right? So pretty much, we start off with this big fight, right? We got this super big fight against the Avengers and this dude named Ant-Man, right? So this dude here, he's a new character, and he's basically the antagonist of the entire thing. So what this dude is doing, literally pummeling the entirety of the mighty Avengers. This story is after Civil War, right? So you got like Iron Man, Tony Stark, he's the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. You got the Sentry, Miss Marvel, Wonder Man. You have all these stupidly powerful people, Ares, like they're crazy strong, right? And they are getting destroyed all at the same time, right? So he like starts talking, like he's like talking crap to him. He's like, okay, like the Blue Marvel barely beat me, okay? Like why would y'all even assume that y'all could even step up to me? Like y'all aren't the Blue Marvel, y'all aren't him. Why would y'all even come here and try this, right? Stuff like that. And eventually, like while he's pummeling them, he starts like disappearing. Like he's talking about how his time's up, stuff like that. We'll get why that happens later, but for now, we just know that his time's up and he just disappears. So with that happening, the Sentry himself. All right, so this is how you know how stupidly strong this dude is, right? So this is after Civil War, right? And this is like around the time of like like World War Hulk, all that stuff already happened. And the Sentry is just like, okay, this dude is like the most powerful person I've ever fought. Like is he really this strong? Stuff like that should tell you how strong this dude is, right? And this dude's the Sentry, he went toe to toe with World War Hulk, right? Fighting against someone that's stronger than World War Hulk, that's not some easily done. That's all I'm saying. So from there we actually go back to 1962. That's where most of like what's going on here, the whole like makeup of what's going on actually happens. So in 1962 there was this dude, his name was the Blue Marvel. He had like everyone loved him, like across the country everybody loved the Blue Marvel, right? And he's like fighting Ant-Man, and what Ant-Man is saying is he wants to make the world better, he wants to make the world more peaceful, but he wants to do it he wants to do it at the edge of a gun. He wants to force it upon people. And Blue Marvel, he's just like, okay, no, you can't do that. We have to let them choose. We have to let it take its natural course, just like that. So they end up fighting, right? And it looks like Blue Marvel's actually gonna lose, but they end up like fighting, and they like fly through a building together, right? And they're just like fighting through it throughout this building. And when the building crumbles, we find out the Blue Marvel won the fight, right? Like he's just standing there and he's just holding Ant-Man's body up, right? And but what happened during this fight is the fact that like his mask was torn. So this is 1962. So that like black people were like they were still being treated harshly, stuff like that. So when his mask is torn and it's revealed that he's a black guy, everyone is just like in shock, right? Because they don't want this, okay? Like it's just a bunch of white people out there, they don't want this. His mask is torn, he's black guy, and everyone they're cheering at first, and as soon as they see it, they're like, oh no, just just like that, right? So from there we actually go to the secretaries, right? Like basically the secretary is like like he's talking to the president, all these different people, and he's basically telling them about this info that he has on the Blue Marvel, right? He's like, okay, yeah, this is dude, he was in the military, his name is Adam Brashear, stuff like that. And eventually they come to the point where they start talking about the fear of it all, right? So what's basically going on is like basically the majority of the population, white people, they're pretty much scared of this dude being black and African American and actually having all this power, right? Because the fear comes in when it's like, okay, but what if he wants to revolt? Like what if he wants to lead his people out of the oppression that they're in? Like what if he wants to come for us now? What if he oppresses us now? Because we can't stop him, okay? A nuke isn't gonna do anything to this guy. Like that would just kill us, okay? This is not gonna do nothing to him. So what should we do here, right? So When that happens, we actually find out that John Kennedy, he actually is in favor of the Blue Marvel, right? Like, he doesn't hate him. He's like, okay, yeah, this dude's doing a good thing, stuff like that, right? But eventually, he actually requests to speak to Adam Brashear, right? Like to basically calm the riots and stuff that are going on. So when that happens, he's like talking to Adam Brashear, and he's like, okay, yeah, like everybody's scared of you, man. Like I wish I didn't have to do this, but everybody is scared of you, right? This is a political move. Is basically what has to be done, right? And what he does is he gives Adam Brashear the Presidential Medal of Freedom, right? And what this is, it's basically like the highest honor that a person can get, basically, in the country. That's basically all it is. And he like asks them basically to stop being Blue Marvel, right? Like, don't stop doing what you're doing. Everyone is scared. You can't do this anymore, right? Just like that, right? And Blue Marvel, he's sad, right? Because like what he does is like he's not doing it out of malice. He's not doing it. He's not gonna turn on anybody. He's not fighting for white people. He's not fighting for black people, right? He's just doing it because it's the right thing to do, right? He has all this power, and he'd basically be irresponsible to not use it to protect people, just like that. So when that happens, we go back to Reed Richards, Tony Stark, and Hank Pym, in the present day, and they're pretty much trying to figure out a way to decrease Ant-Man's power, right? First they try to figure out like who he is, but they can't do that. And like from there they try to figure out like, okay, like let's just try to depower him, like let's like siphon off his power, or like seal it off so he can't use it anymore, right? Because what they figure out is he's actually fueling himself with antimatter, right? So what antimatter is basically just the opposite of matter, right? So like if the two like come in contact with each other, they'll just cancel each other out, right? They'll both just cease to exist. That's basically what's going on. And when Hank Pym asks Reed Richards, he's like, okay, well if that's true, like why is he able to exist here? Like why doesn't he just disappear like as soon as he gets here? And what Reed Richards says is, I mean, I don't think that he's made of it, I don't think that he's actually created by antimatter. I think he's just fueling himself by it. Like that's where his power source comes from, right? So they're basically trying to figure out how they can siphon that off or seal that off of him, just like that, right? So what Tony Stark does is, while they're doing that, he actually goes and he tries to see if he can find the Blue Marvel. So basically Tony Stark at this point, he can do whatever he wants. Like he can do whatever he wants in the US. Like literally, he's the director of SHIELD. So if there's any file of the government that he wants, he can go and get it. Like literally, he can have access to anything that he wants at this point in time. But he cannot have access to the Blue Marvel's protocol, right? So he's like looking through everything, and he ends up finding the Blue Marvel protocol, and he finds out that it was actually an executive order, and he ends up like stumbling across the Blue Marvel protocols himself, right? He like finds out, he like stumbles into it pretty much, and when he's reading it, he's like, oh my god, what is this, right? So after he gets done reading it, we don't see what it says, right? He takes off and he goes to find Dum Dum Dugan, right? And basically what Dum Dum Dugan is saying is, leave that alone, okay, Tony Stark. Leave the Blue Marvel protocols alone. Nothing good is gonna come from it. You're basically just gonna like get even more pissed off. Leave it alone, right? Just like that. And what he starts telling Tony Stark is like the world wasn't ready for this, right? Like the world is not ready for a black superhero in the 60s, okay? Like he was super powerful and everybody was in fear of him, right? Like basically, like the white people thought that they were gonna fight back for him. The black people thought that they were gonna fight, that he was gonna fight with them, but he didn't, so it pissed them off. Literally no one liked the Blue Marvel for that reason, pretty much, right? So when him telling Tony Stark that, like he ends up like telling Tony like, okay, basically, just go to this guy named Croots, okay? Like I can't really tell you much about it. I was only there for a bit. Go to Croots, okay? He could tell you everything about it. Like from the start of Blue Marvel to him like leaving and going away, he was there, okay? Like he can tell you all this stuff, right? Just go to him. So Tony Stark, he leaves and he goes to meet with this guy, right? And basically this is like this is like one of the like more iffy parts of this story, right? Because this dude, like the terminology that he uses is basically like the stuff that was more common in the 60s area, right? Like calling people like coloreds and like the blacks, stuff like that. It was a very like way back then kind of terminology, right? And like Tony Stark, when he's hearing that, he's just like, okay, yeah, you gotta fix that. Like you can't call him boy, you can't call him colors, they're African American, just basically like bringing him up to the times, right? So basically when he gets there, Croots is like talking to him, and he's like telling Tony Stark about all this different stuff, and he's just saying, yeah, like the world, is way different from it was in my younger days, right? Like we were very how should I say, racist, just like that, right? He was saying like the country wasn't right at the time, right? But like what if Blue Marvel himself would would have came and, you know, just like turned against us, basically, you know, started oppressing white people the way that we oppressed them, right? We wouldn't like it, you know, just like that. It was basically the fear of who he was that basically had them turn against him, right? It wasn't just him himself. It's nothing that he ever did. It was just the fear that they actually thought up in their own heads that basically, you know, just like freaked them out pretty much, right? So what they start doing is, you know, while they're talking about that, we actually go back and we find out that Blue Marvel, what they thought in their heads was that Blue Marvel himself was like a micro evolutionary change, right? Like basically signifying that people are starting to evolve, and there's these different kind of, you know, mutations being within people, you know, like mutants being born, you know, stuff like that are, you know, starting to happen, right? So what he does is he actually tells Tony Stark about the Blue Marvel's last mission, right? So the Blue Marvel's last mission, basically what they had done is, like, there was this alien that was coming to Earth, and he was pretty much, you know, just like coming in, and they sent Blue Marvel to go and take care of him, right? Like basically trying to see if he'd get killed, pretty much, right? Like seeing if the alien and Blue Marvel would kill each other, right? So Blue Marvel, he went out there, he was like showing diplomacy to this alien, right? And you know, eventually the alien started attacking him, so they got into this fight, right? And while the alien was like beating into Blue Marvel, he ends up coming back, right? Showing them why he's the Blue Marvel, and he destroys this alien. But at the same time, that was the last time anyone had ever seen of him, right? With that happening, he ends up like going to his bookshelf, right? And he gives Tony Stark this file, right, that he has about, you know, the Blue Marvel, and he like gives it to him, and he's like, okay, if you need anything else, go here, right? So Tony Stark, he takes off, right? He takes off and he shows up to the home of Adam Brashear. He is back on Earth, and his wife is the one that actually answers the door for Tony Stark, right? So he's basically like talking, and he's like, okay, yeah, we need to see your husband Adam, right? You know, just like that, right? So eventually, like, while she's like saying like, oh no, like you can't just like come up in here, you know, stuff like that, he's like, okay, Miss Fraser, just hang on for a second. And she's like, what'd you just call me? And he's just like, okay, yeah, Miss Fraser, like, we know all about you, Marlene Fraser, you know, like telling her all this different stuff about her actual, you know, like her actual identity. And eventually he's like, okay, yeah, here's my number, tell Adam to call me, okay? We need the Blue Marvel. And he takes off. All right, so we're gonna end this video here. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you are new here, and I will see y'all in the next one.